everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Kashrus, presented by the Kashrus Awareness Project in conjunction with Torah Anytime. Today I am privileged to be joined by Rabbi Yochanan Schnall, Rabbinic Coordinator with the CRC Chicago Rabbinical Council. Thank you so much for being here once again. Last time we spoke about the kashrus of tankers and all the ramifications of that. Today I'd like to speak about rail cars and stationary tanks.
Sure.
So we've been talking till now primarily about tankers, which travel. I know they go cross country. They're all over the place. Carrying, it sounds like, predominantly liquids.
Mm-hmm.
How about rail cars and, let's say, stationary tanks, where you have tanks that are connected to the ground, that you also have to go through this process of kashering? How different are those?
So if you think about it, we just said that when it comes to a tanker truck, it's standard after they deliver a product that they're going to go to the tank wash to wash out.
Right.
That's not the way it works with a rail car. The way rail cars work is they have their lane that they go back and forth and back and forth. They get washed out very infrequently. So how do we do that? I mean, that's a big deal for a rail car to actually be kashered.
But forget about the kashrus standpoint, from what you mentioned earlier about not having residue from the prior product into the current product. Shouldn't the rail car, have to undergo a thorough wash just for that reason alone?
So that's a good question. So, but most of the time, almost every time, a rail car is dedicated to a specific product.
Okay. So if it's carrying chocolate, this is a chocolate car.
I mean, you wouldn't find it carrying chocolate so much, but let's say oil would be very common. Be carrying many different types of oils. The main challenge in kashering a rail car is initially when we don't know its history. For all we know, its previous hauling was lard or used cooking oil or something like that, and now we want to bring it into the kosher program.
Okay.
So for that, it's not going to be enough for us to just rely on these spinners. The spinners that they use are not nearly as complex as we have by the tank, the tank wash facilities.
Just out of curiosity, the tanker part of the rail car, is that exactly the same as on a tanker truck? Meaning the tanker
that's
portion?
A good question. So they're much bigger. There's actually five. It's approximately 5 tanker trucks could fit into a tanker truck. Usually is about 6,500 gallons.
Okay.
5 of those approximately could fit into a rail car.
A rail car. Wow.
Yeah.
So it's much bigger.
Yeah, it's much bigger, and most of them are not insulated, like tanker trucks are.
So does that make the kashering process more complex?
Much more complex, because especially we've had issues many times in the winter in Chicago that we want to kasher a rail car.
Right.
So how do we? Let's talk about how we kasher them. So the way that we kasher the rail car would be using steam. What we do is make sure it's clean, and then we introduce steam to it. Now, according to the halacha, you cannot kasher with steam itself. We actually rely on the condensate that builds up.
Okay.
Which is a liquid, and therefore you can kasher with that. And we measure the temperature of the condensate that's rolling down the walls of the interior walls of that rail car. So if you think about it, especially because it's not insulated, that temperature is really getting lost through the walls very quickly, especially in the middle of winter.
Right.
So what we need to do is we need to either just put in steam, a lot of steam, make sure that
at a very high temperature.
Yeah, that steam could be extremely high temperatures. There's no limit to how hot steam could get, and I don't know if there's no limit, but it can be extremely
comparatively speaking.
Right. And then what we do is we just wait and hope that the condensate will reach that temperature. Most of the time it will, especially if it's closed properly on the top and things like that. That will help it.
And how do you determine? I know you were talking about the sprayer before, to make sure that it's reaching every part of the tanker.
So that's a good question.
So with steam also, you want to make sure, especially because you said that these rail tankers are massive.
Are massive, yeah. So the conventional thought is that steam by nature
spreads.
will spread everywhere, and the condensate will spread too. But it's very hard to know. That's the truth. This is going to be the next. And that's one of the things I love about specifically transportation is that it's evolving. It's evolving. We're constantly improving kashrus there. I mean, maybe we should have started with this even, but a lot of times I think consumers don't even begin to realize how much goes into their bag of potato chips. with as far as kashers goes.
Right,
I mean,
sure.
the fact that there's people that are out there that are in the middle of the boondock, in the middle of Iowa, or that are going to oversee a tanker that's going to be delivering that oil.
The oil for the potato chip.
Exactly, and we didn't even get to transloading or stationary tanks or things like that.
Right.
I mean, there's so many steps that the oil needs to take in order to get to the potato chip factory, and every one of those steps needs to make sure that it's covered with a kosher program.
Yeah, no, 100%. This whole topic that we're discussing today, I would imagine most of our viewers never even realized, and I include myself in that, never even realized that it was on the radar of our major kashrus organizations. So that that alone, that's why this conversation is so eye-opening and so educational for us to really appreciate the extent to which people like you and in your Avodas HaKodesh devote your days and weeks and months and years to ensuring that all our products are produced betachlis hahider on the highest level, and it's really incredible. So going back to what you're talking about, let's talk about stationary tanks. The rail cars, you do that. What do you do about stationary tanks?
So
and is it harder or easier?
It's a million times harder.
Okay.
Because believe it or not, the average stationary tank can hold. Let's just talk about what is a stationary tank.
Okay.
Most of my listeners might not even know.
Don't take anything for granted.
So say if you ever go to the airport, you might see these big round white it looks like a building or something. They're often near the airport or near ports and things like that.
Sure. I mean, let's say we're here in New Jersey on the side of the New Jersey Turnpike.
Yes, that's right.
On the way to Newark.
That's right.
We see a lot of those types of structures. I have no idea what they are.
So when they're near the airport, they're usually holding jet fuel. And these are tanks that could hold, I'd say, almost a minimum, almost. I mean, you could have smaller ones, 1 million gallons. Wow. I mean, they don't even measure them by gallons. They measure them with barrels. You know how many barrels it has? I wrote down over here, it has, let's see, each barrel is 42 gallons. So a barrel is
so
1
million
42 gallons. And the average is between 50 and 100,000. That's I shouldn't even say the average. That's like a smaller one. You go near in Texas. You go by the ports or by bottom Texas. You have even ones that are even larger than that, or several million gallons worth.
So absolutely enormous.
Yeah,
enormous.
Exactly. So using what the conventional way of kashering could be very difficult. Last year we actually had a storage tank that the prior product that was being what the purpose of a storage tank is really it's like for very large companies to stockpile their product. They don't know where where the winds are going to turn, so to speak.
They want to make sure they have enough.
They have enough.
Is that like a surplus?
Exactly. Or they anticipate that the costs are going to go really high, and this way they can buy a lot of that product and store it. That's usually what it's for. Or if, let's say, a ship is delivering liquids, this way they have a place to store it until they
until they need it.
Until they need it, right? Exactly. So these things are so big that it's very difficult to kasher them. We literally went for weeks trying to brainstorm and figure out. I spoke to almost every kashrus agency that had any experience, and we tried this, we tried that, and believe it or not, we really were nothing helped, because it was February in Chicago with temperatures below zero. And that just made it more difficult because in
order to reach the temperature,
and
it's almost impossible.
Right? Yeah, it was almost impossible. And then
so is the only answer to find a storage tank that's new, or I mean, is that really?
So we actually, in the end, one of the regional manager, he's like, this can be done. It needs to be done because the tank farm, they have a client who already leased that tank, and their rail cars were already waiting. They needed to unload their product, and they were paying a tremendous amount of rent and different things for their rail cars because the rail cars needed to empty already.
Right.
You can imagine these things backing up.
And everything is dependent on the next step.
Exactly. It was really crazy. And finally, we just used steam, just good old steam, and we really pumped it in a very strong way, a lot of steam. For a very long amount of time.
And this isn't a clean tank. The tank was
the
clean
tank was
already
clean.
Which, by the way, how did they even clean such a massive?
So the way they think that's another point is that they have they put in spinners inside of it, or they'll
spray out water.
They'll spray on either water or detergent, or they do something else which is called sand blasting, which is they spray like different pellets of either sand or pellets of other types of material. They call it medium. There's different types of medium, which is that's a way to describe the medium is just a generic term. Whatever their
substance.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the type of word. Yeah, and and they're really just cleaning it down the walls from whatever was absorbed, because whatever the prior commodity was in there could have easily leached into the walls or stayed there for a very long, because they could have been there for years.
Right.
Yeah. So that in the end it was just good old steam, and we just pumped in a tremendous amount, and in the end, Baruch Hashem, we were able to accomplish it. But it was
just that's a big job.
It was a huge job. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is a fascinating topic. You've educated us on something that, again, this is one of those topics here on Let's Talk Kashrus that I think most of us not only are not familiar about, we didn't even know that these questions exist. What any other final thoughts that you would want to share with our viewers?
I mean, I would just like to just reiterate what we mentioned before, which is just the amount of time and thought that goes into the kasher agencies. We try very hard to help our consumers and to be there for our consumers, but at the same time, in the back end, there's a tremendous amount of work that we're every day and week where we're working with whether we're working with different companies or whether we're working with just technology to understand how could we utilize technology, or how could we understand how this whatever we're working on, whatever I might say is transportation, but whatever it is. People don't necessarily appreciate the amount of work, just understand, learning up the sugyas and really not only in halacha, which is of course, but also learning up the sugyas in how does this equipment operate? Right,
understanding the technology of it, right?
Understand technology in order to be able to make sure that kashrus is really being kept, is a huge thing.
Listen, it's phenomenal, and we appreciate it. Now we know to thank you for all your efforts and the entire CRC, and really all the kashrus agencies who work in tandem, which it sounds like you do, because everyone's contributing on their end, and people are relying on other people, and it's only as an aguda achas, everyone working together, that us as the kashrus consumers, we're able to benefit from that collaboration and from your work. So thank you for what you do. And we look forward in the future to hearing updates, and whenever you have new information for us on this fascinating topic, we look forward to speaking to you again. Thank you for being here, and continue to hatzlacha.
Thank you very much for having me.